Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you can all hear me. I'm going to invite our speakers to the stage. I think I am waiting on just one more. But welcome in. Hello, how's everyone doing? GM. If you're there, please put a little GM in the chat so we can see and hear you. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Not here, so that we can see that you're there. Hello, hi again. Yeah, good to see you guys back here after the last workshop. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Matt. How's it going? Let me just also get
Hello, hi.
to the stage when you rise. Hi. How's it going? Yeah. It is getting chilly in here. Well, I say in here, in the UK, isn't it, Catherine? It's yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. But yeah, I think we are just waiting for Sean. But everyone in the audience, hello, hello. Simon says you're not alone. What does that mean? We're here. Okay, good. Yes. Yes, because I was saying, are you guys here? Hello. Hi, guys. Amazing. Aha, and Sean is here. Let me invite him to the stage. Amazing. So everyone in the chat, everyone watching, yeah, it's the last workshop of the week. Thank you so much for turning up. We are joined by the Visa team, and we're going to be talking about the evolving payments landscape. But I'll leave it to them to chat some more about their presentation. Hi, Sean. How's it going? Awesome. Cool. So while you get that set up, amazing. I guess, yeah. Whenever you guys are ready, feel free to begin.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. And hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Visa workshop. I don't know how many of you are there, but I can definitely see like a pretty dynamic chat channel going on. So that's great. And I also know that this is Friday. So, I'm hoping to keep this conversation like dynamic and also interesting, and doesn't need to take as long as a full hour if we end early. But I definitely do encourage you to ask questions, and we're excited because this is like a first time for us to be sort of involved in a open sort of public hackathon. In some sense, we're happy to be a sponsor of this and to just support the general community for developers and to trying to kind of create and generate new ideas. Just to level set a little bit in terms of like what this workshop is aimed for, is mainly just trying to provide you guys with a better sense of what we do today at Visa. What does crypto mean for us, and some of the thinkings we're having around the space in general, rather than kind of going very specific on the challenges and such. And I guess to begin with, I think one of the biggest misconceptions I've been hearing when I'm saying, I work at Visa, and, and people will be like, so yeah, you're like a credit card company provider, right? I think that's probably like one of the biggest things of what we don't. This is not what we do, actually. We're here, we are part of the payment ecosystem, really as an enabler to helping banks to have different payment schemes, and we're here to really to facilitate the movement of money itself. So in a way, you can think about the role that we play is very much kind of behind the scene on the back end. We're not directly facing the consumers. Of course, you see the Visa logo on all of the credit or debit cards you're using, but really we're here to build out the right scheme and to create the process so that we can work our key ecosystem partners, which there are many, to really make that money to move from A to B. So just one thing. And maybe before going into this presentation, a little bit about myself. So I'm Catherine Gu. I am part of the Visa crypto team. I'm based in California most of the time, in the Bay Area. our team, the Visa Cryptos team, started around back in 2018, in which we were inspired by a lot of the original activities, say, done by Libra and others. And you probably have seen we were like working with them to some extent at the time. We have then evolved a lot since then. We are very much focused around thinking, what does the future of money looks like? Again, what's interesting about this job is every single day we think about money, and money can be very abstract just because you don't really need to think about it, right? It can be that physical representation of cash, or it can just be entirely digital. It could be your Venmo, it could be your Revolut and others, but like you don't really need to think about it. But again, that's our role, to make it as seamless as possible for the user experience. Whereas on the back end, there's a lot of intricacies to really figure out how the money moves. So from the Visa crypto perspective, is we're looking at blockchains as this new type of payment rail that could enable new ways for money to move from A to B. We're not trying to recreate or generate new types of money, because ultimately the money is still the same. You're trying to represent the dollar, you're trying to represent the pound. There's nothing new here. What's new is the technology, is the underlying infrastructure. And we're trying to think about blockchain as part of that backbone infrastructure of what it could enable for the future of money movement and for the future of payments, of what that looks like. And this is where our team comes in, because it's very important for Visa to understand how the future of money should look like, how we can really add value to the industry, whether it is for our existing financial institutions, what also just we want to encourage this developer-friendly ecosystem. What is our role to play? And again, what kind of infrastructure and things that we can help to bring to the market as well. So that's just kind of a very super high level description of why we're here, like what is Visa Crypto. Now, if we can go into the slide for the next one, please. Okay, I just want to give you that perspective, because as I said, that money can be a very abstract thing, and it really has evolved significantly since the beginning of age, right? And Sean has built this amazing chart to really show that progression, because we have been seeing this many forms of money evolve. Now, if you've seen some economic definition around what is money, it is really trying to fulfill three fundamental roles. One is that money is a unit of account, right? It's just trying to accounting for things. It is a medium of exchange. That's the second function of what it entails to do, i.e. when we transact, when payments happen, is that medium of exchange. And the third is that it is a store of value. You can hold on to that money, maybe invest in something else, but that money should hopefully over time generate something for you. So money really should just encapsulate those three fundamental kind of core principles. And it is evolving from bartering to gold to coins to bills. But as you can increasingly see, there's this wave of digitization happening. So just to be very realistic today, money moves very seamlessly, especially if you're someone living in the world with like lots of real-time payment systems involved. You don't really need to think about it. When I tap my cards, when I just Venmo you, that money, when I just do like a bank-to-bank transfer, that money gets to your friend's bank account immediately. You don't even need to think about it, and the money has arrived, and that's it. And you can get that goods immediately at the store when you're making that payment. And hence, I want to emphasize the fact that money has already been very digital in today's world. Now, where does blockchain kick in? Blockchain kicks in because we're trying to think about the new way in which the infrastructure, specifically the payment rails, can be built a little bit differently. Previously, well, up till now, most of the payment rails has been using some form of centralized ledger in which we run, and to make sure that it's resilient, is scalable, and is secure. Now, blockchain has this potential. I think there's still a lot of limitations and things to be tested, but blockchain can also bring in this distributed ledger technology that could improve on the resiliency, make it 24/7, always on infrastructure, etc., to allow new ways to move the money. And this is how we've been thinking about the utility in which blockchain technology as a solution could really enable ways to improve the current system. So that just gives you kind of like a progression of how we're thinking about the evolution or modernization of money, if you will, till now. If we go to the next slide. This is a view in which we're thinking about then, therefore, what does it mean, right? Like, who is helping to facilitate the movement of money? And you have to look at it from a bank's perspective. And that's why I'm saying, you know, we're not a payment card. What was a payment card provider? Not sorry, a credit card provider, because we work with our issuers, and these issuers are the banks who issue these cards for their clients. And as you're looking at the bank side, there has been this continuation of bank modernization in terms of what they're doing with respect to their core banking ledger system. And what does the core banking ledger system do? It's a record of accounts. Again, the notion about ledger, the records of accounts have existed for a long time, right? And it's really kind of that evolution, the continuation of that evolution that we're witnessing right now from a institutional standpoint. In a sense, at the beginning, this is kind of all in the mainframe, in the big computers that you do all these sort of things. Over time, it's starting to move towards more cloud-based capabilities. So then it's a lot more powerful, but it's also can improve on the resiliency. But now, as we're looking at DLT, that D is really standing for the distributed ledger. This is where the blockchain is that continuation of this modernization path, as banks are trying to build and maintain an infrastructure that's 24/7 near instant money movement. And I emphasize that is to provide you a little bit of an insight, especially relating to the challenge itself, because we mentioned this is sort of B2B payments, right? And what are the businesses are trying to kind of achieve right now? So if you think about it, a very large multinational corporate, someone like Apple, let's say, they might have bank accounts with many different banks over 100 different countries, right? Like the Apple UK might have a bank account with, I don't know who they have, but let's say Barclays. Apple Singapore might have another bank account with DBS. Now, when they're trying to make money movement, say Apple London office is trying to send money over to the Apple's Singapore office, in today's world, that means that money need to leave from one bank's core ledger banking system over to another one. And this existing infrastructure that helps to facilitate the movement. You probably have heard of the name SWIFT. SWIFT is an international messaging layer that facilitate these money movement, the message instruction layer of things. And then in terms of the money movement, you also need to go through the corresponding banking flows to achieve that. And you know, I might have mentioned a few sort of like industry lingos. And so, you know, if you're not familiar with what's corresponding banking model, or how, if you want to find out more about how Swift work, I definitely would encourage you to take a deeper look. That could help you to maybe brainstorm ideas as you're looking at the B2B payment space. But the idea is basically, you know, as I'm trying to move money, even though it's all within Apple, but Apple UK over to Apple Singapore, and especially depends on which bank you're banking with, that process at this current moment in time might be quite complicated. You might not receive your money straight away, like within seconds. It might take maybe a day, 2 days, etc., to actually see that money actually getting to the bank account on the other hand. And you might ask the question why. There could be things to do with every single point in which the money moves. There's a level of authentication, there's a level of trying to make sure everything is correct, right, to approve, etc., and then onwards and onwards to do so. And so what the world is looking for right now is to make that process a lot more frictionless, in the sense that we want that system to be near real-time instant, right? In the sense, it might take a few minutes, a few seconds for literally that money to arrive cross-border, regardless of, you know, who are the counterparts. You might also look for infrastructure that is 24/7 available, meaning that I don't need to wait for my Singapore Monday morning to open up so that the money will arrive. If I send the money on a Saturday night, I should see that within a few minutes or even within a few hours on a Sunday in Singapore to get that. That's something not really available today. And is there a better way to do it? Probably yes. And this is in which we're thinking about blockchain as a back-end infrastructure to really improve on some of these existing payment flows. And it matters a lot when you're looking at high value transactions, and hence why we picked this challenge around B2B payments, right? If I have to wait for 3 days to get my money, which is in the millions or tens of millions, that might matter a lot for my company. Rather than if we're just doing a peer-to-peer payments, which could be just $10, and we might not need to worry too much about it. So that just gives you a sense of what we're thinking about as we're looking at that modernization of banks. So let's go to the next slide. So the next slide, I just want to share a little bit about what we have been doing as Visa, and especially our team here with Mud and Sean and a lot more other folks on this team. We're actively working in this space that we call digital currencies. And, for the last two slides, I think the best way I can categorize of what we're seeing is that there is this new movement around blockchain tokenization. So again, I just want to make it very clear in terms of the lingo and definition. Tokenization itself is not new. In fact, Visa has been a pioneer of tokenization. We have created many different products actually over the years, in which initially as a response to reduce fraud when you're kind of making a payment, and to reduce the amount of sensitive information you need to review at the point of payment. We did a lot of technology improvement to desensitize sensitive information, if you will. And that process is called tokenization. And in today's world, we actually have several different products at Visa to do tokenization. It's not on the blockchain. Now, as we're looking at blockchain tokenization, I think this is where everyone's more familiar with, in which is really tokenizing the money itself, whether that's a stable coin or that could be something like an NFT. You're tokenizing the underlying thing and put it onto the blockchain as a piece of digital token that can be used across blockchains, and your private key becomes your credential. So as we're looking at the money movement space, we are looking at that blockchain tokenization of fiat money. And fiat money is what you see in that first slide in terms of the evolution of money, whether that's dollar, euro, yen, etc. You can tokenize the existing ways in which money is being represented, just like how you can tokenize a piece of artwork onto the blockchain. You do that exactly the same as you're tokenizing fiat money. And of course, we have already seen that in the stablecoin world. This is in which, whether something like a USDC, that's a tokenization of an existing piece of dollar and put it on chain. I don't know how many of you have heard about CBDC. CBDC stands for central bank digital currencies. And this is where, interesting enough, right, not only the sort of the decentralized world of the players are interested in blockchain technology for other reasons, such as financial institutions, such as central banks, such as regulators. They're also looking at blockchain for many different motivations and reasons, but one of which is in which the central banks are thinking about bringing existing central bank money, which is again a type of fiat money, and being representing that directly on the blockchain. And this is what CBDC stands for. CBDC has been going on for quite some time by now. I think it was started back around 2018-19 by a few central banks. But right now, if you're looking at across the entire world, I think the latest statistic we've seen is that over 90% of all the central banks around the world, which represents a significant amount of the country coverages, are actively experimenting with CBDCs and related stuff. And for Visa, this is just providing you the overview. We're actively engaged with a lot of these central banks, with a lot of the banks, commercial banks and financial institutions in that journey to think about what kind of infrastructure, what kind of standards, what kind of requirements might be needed. And in the meantime, we're having these active discussions with startups and fintechs and understanding if there's any valuable solutions we can help to leverage. And hence, using this slide, hopefully you get a sense that, how we operate. We spend a lot of time talking with central banks, really understanding the objectives and motivations as they are trying to think through what is the next phase of money and what is the next phase of digital currencies might shape out to be. And that's an incredibly, I would say, dynamic and very exciting space to think through. All right. Now we can move on to the next slide. I think we'll be sharing this set of slides anyway. So we did provide some links for you, so then you can click on and read upon in your own time. And again, this is really just we're doing a lot of active thought leadership and sharing a lot of the ideas and such in an open forum. And I would just categorize, definitely through my personal experience, that this entire journey of getting very deep and falling into the rabbit hole around digital currencies has been tremendously exciting, not least because the fact that it's a very complex field. I don't think it's a one single sort of dimensional thing about, let's say, it's just about the technology. No, it's not just about that. And it's not about just decentralization or anything as such. It's a combination of many things, because ultimately what you're trying to answer is the why, right? Like, why do we need to create blockchains? What is this use case? What's that killer use case we're trying to look for that the next 1 billion people will use? That question cannot answered alone by a single dimension to say we just need decentralization. That's why we believe, because that's not what the people are looking for. So it's an incredibly nuanced topic, and hence from our perspective, we're looking at things from a range of perspective. One key thing, of course, is coming from that research from the technology level. There's many interesting things such as privacy preserving technologies, ZK related stuff that we're actively looking at. And in fact, the team of researchers at Visa, we were the original creator of Zither, which is a protocol that has been used in many other zero knowledge proofs, etc., in the current protocols, in which we originally developed that with Stanford, Professor Dembélé and his team back in the days. We're looking at things like cross-chain interoperability. So whether it's things like payment channels, HTLC, which is the hash-time lock contract, or things like bridges and stuff like that, that's also useful. You can bring it into the more sort of the regulated institutions to facilitate different use cases, and that has been fascinating. So one dimension is around the technology itself, but there's many other things such as policy consideration is incredibly exciting, because I think one thing is we have to figure out, what does the policymakers are looking for. First, we need to, as Visa, as a regulated entity, we need to operate within the framework that protects the consumer, that protect the businesses, and we need to have the right approach to think about it and the right dialogues. Therefore, that's why in the previous slide, you've seen that we're actively engaging in these conversations just to help to better define what are the key objectives, and therefore, as a private sector company, how can we best contribute what we have today to the goal that everyone has in the future. But you should also think from a very user-centric approach. And I keep on emphasizing that, because I think that is like one key thing which personally I think the industry has not solved yet. Because if I'm looking at what is that killer use case for blockchains, I don't know. And maybe there isn't one single killer use case. I think it could be many multifaceted. It could be something as simple as I'm trying to improve the operational efficiency of how today's trade finance work. And a little bit of an upgrade in that infrastructure through DLT technology could just be efficient. Or I could look at something really interesting like the future of, real world asset tokenization. And that's a brand new paradigm the world have never experienced before. And I can build a completely new business and new use case, etc., on top of blockchains. That could also be interesting for the other extreme end of the spectrum. But I think the key is actually trying to really identify and being very concrete. Which kind of use case are you looking at, and what exactly is that persona? And I think, again, relating back to the challenge itself, we want to keep the challenge as high level as possible, i.e. only just providing the fact that we want to focus on B2B payments, but it's really up to you to think about it. But what I would encourage you to really start in your head planning around is that think about that persona, right? Are you looking at, say, a very, and this is literally just randomly giving examples, so you don't need to follow anything like that, but you're just thinking about, say, a very specific type of supplier in an industry segment, identifying the pain points that they are currently having with respect to identity, and then figure out that flows, because you need to get it right in terms of exactly what that user persona you're thinking through. And starting from that, you can then identify the set of use cases in which a identity solution can be useful. So this is how we approach to any aspect, whether it's privacy, whether it's identity, whether it's interoperability. We want to think about it from a very user-centric approach. And work such as the Lift Challenge, the Brazil Lift Challenge, and you can read about it later on, you'll get a sense of how we're thinking about these very specific use cases, and hence trying to build out a solution that may be able to be iterated for other use cases in the future as well. So great. Now let's move on to the next slide. I also would encourage you highly to please just go onto our website. I think it's visa.com/crypto, but if you just Google Visa crypto page, you'll see a section that's called Thought Leadership. This is the team that Mud is leading a lot of the work, and we have a team called the Visa Crypto Protocol team. And this team, we spend a lot of time talking with blockchain companies and protocols to really get a very fundamental understanding about the space, what they're doing. So things such as consensus mechanisms, things such as crypto economics, things like how do I scale things, how do I improve on privacy, all these sort of cryptographic primitives. Our team spend a lot of time understanding it and writing about it, because we want to educate the space in general with our clients, with our institutional space, so then people can have a better idea about the technology itself, and hopefully you can find useful and interesting applications for that. On the other hand, we're also actively trying to drive what the next phase of new development could look like. So I think a good example is, we have actually been one of the early thinkers around account abstraction. Many of you I know are very familiar with this. We published the report back in the end of last year, in which it was actually during one of our internal hackathon that we're trying to just look out for novel, interesting things to explore. And we stumbled upon account abstraction. And you can find that original blog post that we released on the Visa Crypto website. And there we're really looking at a very simple use case about auto payments and how you can enable auto payments on blockchains. And what was very interesting from a payment geek kind of persona from our perspective is that, from Visa perspective, we're very used to many different types of payments. So whether it's a push payments, in which a sender push that payment instruction over to the recipient, or whether it's a pull payment in which the recipient is pulling fund from the sender's account. Those are very familiar processes that we do on a day-to-day level, right? Like you probably have things like direct standing debit or direct debit sort of orders in which you can regularly pay out your utility bills and such like that, and you don't need to worry about it. But very well on a blockchain, as the sender, as the user, you actually have to actively push the payment. On blockchain by design is a push payment, right? Like if you think about it, the sender has to actively sign that transaction through your wallet and say, okay, I approve this transaction, please send this to the recipient that I specify. There is no natural mechanism being defined, say on Ethereum, that says anyone can just pull money from your MetaMask wallet. That just doesn't happen today. And so, last year when we were looking for interesting ideas to do a hackathon internally, this is how we stumble upon account abstraction to redefine certain interfaces, such that we build a delegatable smart contract that can pool payments instead of following the traditional push payment on the blockchain, to enable auto payments, which is a very familiar user experience that you already enjoy in today's world. So that's just an example, and across many different iterations, our latest publication around paymaster, and how to pay a gas fee using linking it with your Visa card or something like that is another novel sort of exploration that our team on the protocol side is actively doing. So just to give a sense about what we're doing as a team in general in the Web3 space. Great. So I think I'm in 30 minutes, and that sort of round up my my presentation. It's time for Q&A.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
everyone
Thank you
for
so
joining.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
And yeah, thanks for all the questions that we've gotten so far in the chat. I'll read off some right now, Catherine and Mert, that we can perhaps talk about. One of the big ones that I saw repeated was, what are some pain points within B2B payments, and specifically in the cross-border realm? And I would say that there are several pain points that businesses face in the B2B payment space. For one, as they move towards these new blockchain-based systems, as we described here, two banks or two businesses could be operating on different blockchains. And so when they're trying to conduct a payment across those networks, there can be inefficiencies trying to resolve that, is one example. Another one could be specifically in the cross-border scenario, foreign exchange. Because the way that we do current exchange now on traditional rails does not directly convert over to crypto when you have more instant or near instant settlement. And so new ways and methods have to be thought about when you're converting from one currency to another. As well as a big one, which I think is the focus of this hackathon a bit, is security. And during B2B payments, fraud, as well as money laundering and other sort of illegal activities, are huge pain points and expenses for businesses and banks alike. And there's potential using blockchain technology to improve the security of the payment rails and the payment system by providing more guarantee of authentication and authorization of who's involved in the party, and to just also allow transparency throughout the process, so that if need be, you can also revert back and do invoicing to see what happened at each step of the payment process. Speaking of this process, I would say that a last big pain point is the fact that it is a very complex and multi-step process. It has not only merchants and businesses, but their own commercial banks, the correspondent banks, the central banks. It's a very multi-step process that goes through a lot of intermediaries to make these B2B payments, especially cross-border. And so, perhaps there's a way to using blockchains and digital identity to help streamline some of that process, or just at least make it more secure. Another question that we got was about, is the CBDC versus decentralized finance? And do we see that as, I guess, antagonistic or against the idea of decentralization? I can answer, but Catherine or Mert, do you all want to say anything on that point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the like-for-like comparisons to begin with, because firstly, decentralized finance is a use case, it's an application, whereas whether it's CBDC or stable coins, it's a tool, right? Because it is the money, it is the fiat on chain, that what you can do with it. And one thing what you can do with it is to involve that in some way, to lend, to create credit, etc. So I'm not really sure if you can realistically compare that like for like. But having said that, I think, by the way, it's also encouraging to see that, I've said that the experimentation around CBDCs have been happening for several years now. So a few projects, I don't remember exactly the project names, but I do remember that a few projects for CBDC have been looking at decentralized finance and how that could be linked together. So if you remember that, I defined that there are three principles or three economic definitions about what money is, right? I think what's really, truly interesting about what the money can be in the future, and this is again thinking about the programmable aspect of things, is that money in the future can actually become a platform in which you can then build applications on top of. And that's exactly what we have seen as you're looking at stable coins, and then you have built all these sort of DeFi lending protocols on top of that, because smart contracts can be composable. You can then build things on top of one another, and they can all sort of interact with one another in different ways. That's something quite net new, and it really demonstrates the power of programmability. And hence, whether we're looking at CBDCs or there's things like tokenized bank deposits or stable coins, you can think about money in that way. It is not about a debate between centralized versus decentralized. Again, I emphasize it is about the use case. Centralization or not, that's not a use case, that's a user preference. But if you're looking at use cases across finance, I would say there's a huge space around that. And this is what you're seeing right now with a lot of the growth of real world assets, in which people, again, are making use of composabilities and programmabilities to do things. And I would just also just say that, we have already started experimenting with that, right? And Sean can speak more to it, the fact that relating to the lift challenge that I mentioned in one of the slides, and you can read up about it, we were trying to think about what does the future of what we call programmable finance could look like, in a sense, leveraging blockchain technology to create a much more better access into finance for certain people who need financing, and to allow global investors to have access to markets, to asset classes that previously they might be restricted, becomes really interesting as you're thinking about money as a platform. So that's why I think starting the question is not necessarily compatible, because you're not really comparing Apple with Apple. Having said that, I definitely see that because of the programmability potential around the future of money, there could be a lot of interesting financial applications that you can think through.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, just to add to that, I think that centralized and decentralized finance, they're not trying to operate in a one winner takes all zero-sum game. It's not a either or situation, but a both and both have foundations in blockchains and cryptography, and both are effective at implementing use cases. It really comes down to preference, regulation, jurisdiction, and whatnot. But I don't think it's necessarily a battle between them. And the lift challenge that we did is a prime example of that. Visa was a finalist in the Central Bank of Brazil's challenge to sort of explore how digital currencies could work, specifically with a CBDC on a centralized finance digital currency that they operated, that did have many interactions with DeFi and decentralized currencies such as Ethereum. And so it was, it showed as a way for it to be interoperable, and where there's clear environments where you're using one versus the other, but that they can interact with each other seamlessly. And so I would definitely encourage people to read up on how we interacted with and implemented that lift challenge to show how both CBDCs and DeFi can kind of work together. Now, I'm going to move forward on to another question I see that's specifically about the challenge as well. So what I hear is that first, people are asking, like, is our track and our challenge open to using any kind of tech stack, or do you have to use technology specified by Visa? For our challenge, we wanted it to be very open-ended, and so as a result, our only preference and requirement is that you use the Onyx SDKs that are provided by the hackathon sponsors. But other than that, it's fully open, and any public open source tech stacks you want to use, please feel free to use that. As we did not actually provide any specific Visa tech stack for this challenge. And then similar to that, like, what blockchain will we use for this track, public or specific Visa blockchain? No, there's no Visa specific blockchain. Again, just as long as it's in some form or factor using the Onyx SDK, it is up to your creative ideas.
Yeah, and I just want to just highlight that Visa is a sponsor of this. We're not like we're not bringing out tech or anything. So we're really sponsoring, encouraging the event, and we won't be judging either. So I think this is very much open to you.
Let me see. Hopefully that helped provide the answer, at least how they use the tech stack, as well as the pain points that we're thinking about for the B2B payments. Another question that I saw was, do we think that banks will create their own blockchains or use existing ones? I can take it, or Murder, Catherine, do you want to elaborate on that?
Sorry, what's the question? Do I think the bank would use...
Are banks creating their own blockchains, or are they using existing ones?
So I think it's a combination of both, in the sense like a lot of the banks are looking at permissioned blockchains, and there's many existing solution providers. Some of the ones that have been using many experimentation that we've seen publicly are things like Hyperledger Besu, which is a permissioned EVM compatible one, such as R3 Quarter. Those are examples in which banks are using existing ones. There are also banks who are building, I think, their own sort of proprietary technology stack. And I don't know if there's a direction yet. I think right now there's still a lot more to be tested, and focus on the requirements are going to be important. So things like scalability, throughput, latency, privacy, level of permissioning, level of access, etc. Those are all going to be things that need to be tested, and hence we're seeing a combination of the bank activities in this space.
Okay, I'm seeing people are asking a bit further about what we mean by a challenge. Again, we will ourselves will not be judging it. We're simply sponsoring the challenge and allowing the hackathon provided facilitators to at least review and judge our challenge. But it is very open-ended. There's so many different pain points where digital identity can help improve payment processes and B2B payments. From, if you think about one, fraud and security is another big one that we highlighted, to cross-border payments, different blockchain networks, and even smaller use pain points such as merchant loyalty and that process of how they manage their loyalty system while maintaining privacy. And let's see, what other questions did we get?
And sorry, John, I see that one of the latest ones, who will be the judge instead? I don't know if Angela, you might be able to help us answer that. So that we'll leave it with Anko to help us out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, regarding that, JC, we kind of have a pool of judges that will judge for kind of the general tracks for the hackathon, as well as the visa track too. So it's kind of a bunch of specialists and people who who have come recommended and will know the space. So, but it won't be either the Onyx team nor the visa team. I hope that kind of makes sense. Cool. Right. Was that all of the questions then? Yeah. I guess
last one I see, I guess, is
yeah.
about regulation limitations, and is regulation in any way constraining or holding back the embracing of crypto or Visa in crypto? And I wouldn't necessarily say it's constraining or holding us back, but rather we just want to be very cognizant of the jurisdictions that we operate in to ensure that we comply with all the laws. And different countries are just approaching crypto in very different ways. And so as a global company that operates in each one of these countries, it is a complex task to ensure that we allow these interactions between them under different rules, but definitely not necessarily a limiting one, I would say. I believe that is all I see. I do see one about the Visa crypto team hiring. And Catherine, I don't know if you have any insight into that, or if there's if us. I know Visa is hiring. I'm not sure if the crypto team specifically has any open positions.
I think the best way to keep track is to really on the Visa career website, because anything will publish that in real time there. I don't know if there's any current open positions. There might be. I just simply don't know. But whatever it is, that information will be posted immediately on the Visa career page, and it will specify if it's for Visa crypto team. So.
Great, thank you to you both for answering that. Yeah, and Adegbenga, if you're interested in a Web3 job, watch out for the Encode Web3 talent fair that's coming up next month. because that will be, I think, helpful if you're looking for a job in Web3. But yeah, I guess, yeah, we're around the 45-minute mark. So that's kind of perfect. If anyone has any last questions, feel free to pop them in the chat now. But I think we could probably wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Catherine, for coming and speaking. Thank you both, Mert and Sean, for speaking.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you being so interactive on the chats, because I can see all these things scrolling through, and I can't follow like real time 100%, but really appreciate your thoughts and interactiveness. So yeah.
Yeah, it was great, guys, especially for Friday. Oh, the last workshop of the Friday and last workshop of the week. So really great to see you all chatting in the yeah over there. Well,
Thank you all.
yeah, thank you again so much. We'll wrap it up there. And to everyone in the audience still, we have one more workshop next Monday. Watch out for the announcements for that. And please get in touch with me via email, Discord, Calendly, on my Calendly link. Let me know what you're building and if I can support you in any further way. Awesome. Thank you all so much from the Visa team.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
bye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. See ya.
Bye.